There are a ton of young players going to camp for the Kansas City Chiefs this season, and so the question will always naturally rise, which of these players should I be keeping an eye on? Now, I did a video reaction for every one of the Kansas City Chiefs draft picks, as well as the UDFA players that I thought had any chance of making the roster. One of those players was none other than Elijhah Badger out of Florida. But I am pretty confident he has a chance to make the roster. I am met today with a little bit of pushback in the way of Arrowhead Pride itself and author Rocky Magana. Now, in an article titled Chiefs Camp Crushes Florida wide receiver Elijhah Badger, the former Florida receiver, is an intriguing prospect from Arrowhead Pride by Rocky Magana, we get a take with which I will vehemently disagree. However, I want to put this out there up front. I really appreciate Arrowhead Pride and all the work that all of the guys over there do, and I am not making this video in order to usurp the article of its value. The article is filled with lots of interesting points, mostly filled with Rocky's own scouting on Elijhah Badger, which is sort of, so my video that I did on Elijhah Badger has my scouting notes on Elijhah Badger, and that's kind of, in my opinion, the value to the video that I made. The value to the article that Rocky put up on Elijhah Badger is his own scouting. So while and whereas I will start with kind of the conclusion of the article, the rest of the article is absolutely worth reading, and if you are interested in Elijhah Badger and his chances to make the roster, you should go read that article on Arrowhead Pride. But here we go. So, the article asks, is he crush-worthy? Is he worthy of a Camp Crush nomination? One of the players that you will be watching, like Justin Ross a few years ago, like Nico Remigio a couple years ago. And we get the following. Despite all of his strengths, Badger strikes me as just the sort of player who benefits greatly from NIL money. In 2024, he was a 23-year-old man playing against a bunch of teenagers, and it looked like it. But the NFL is an entirely different level. And when I watch Badger's tape, all I see is a pretty good college player who I don't think has much of a shot at making the roster or making an impact in the league. And if we're being truthful, I don't think the Chiefs do either. Otherwise, they might have given him more guaranteed money on his contract than the $25,000. Final verdict? No. I see your no, and I raise you a yes. I think that Elijhah Badger is going to make the team. I think he will be the final wide receiver on the roster this year with the potential to get a whole lot better. Now, I say that knowing full well that the Kansas City Chiefs have a number of veteran receivers who have been on the team before, currently under contract, Juju Smith-Schusters of the world, Sky Moores of the world, etc., with whom Andy Reid often sides. But the article mentions that he was just an older guy beating up on 18-year-olds in college. And as someone who himself was not able to go to college directly out of high school, I had to work in the workforce for a few years to put myself in that position. I can empathize with beating up on younger college kids. But that said, he played in the SEC. And he played at Florida. Florida, in my opinion, was held back a lot by their quarterback situation. So if Florida was held back by their quarterback situation, so too would have been Elijhah Badger. Now, the main criticism that I have of Elijhah Badger is that a lot of his production did come against lesser competition. But you still have to be the better athlete in those situations. So if being the better athlete, having professional coaches, having coaches like the Chiefs have, can work you into something more. Having a force multiplier at quarterback as opposed to a liability at quarterback, having a force multiplier like Patrick Mahomes can help you fulfill your potential as well. But I think part of what Rocky is doing in this article is answering the wrong question. The question is not, can Elijhah Badger be a number one wide receiver in the NFL? That would be an unfair question, which admittedly is not asked in the article. But I think it is answered in the article. The question, however, I think is, can he be better than Sky Moore? Can he have higher potential than Sky Moore? Can he be more of a contributor than Justin Watson? Can he be more explosive than Juju Smith-Schuster last year? These, I think, are the questions that should be asked last season. So the role into which Elijhah Badger might be walking is the following. Last year, Juju Smith-Schuster in Sky Moore's largely in Sky Moore's absence, Juju Smith-Schuster had 231 receiving yards. The season before that, Sky Moore had 250. The season before that, Sky Moore had 244. It might be flip-flopped with Sky Moore. I can't remember exactly if it was 244, 250, or 250, 244, but those are the numbers. It seems that in Andy Reid's offense, there is a spot holder for a guy that can produce and get a minimum of 230 to 250 yards. This spot might be the place on the roster for which Elijhah Badger is hoping to contribute. Now, I know that sounds like a silly idea. Oh, well, there's a guy that Andy Reid calls up for 230 yards. But that's not exactly what the role is. The role is certain routes on certain plays where you will be the number 3 read. Sky Moore sometimes was able to make the reception and get a couple yards. Other times, he didn't make the reception. Juju Smith-Schuster, for his part, was pretty good at making the reception, but Juju Smith-Schuster's athleticism at this point in his career are severely diminished. So he would make the catch, but he wouldn't turn and get any yards. Elijhah Badger, in my opinion, is more explosive than Juju, higher upside than Sky Moore. Here is the RAS on Elijhah Badger, a 9.3 overall score. You'll see in a moment why I'm not particularly a big fan of the RAS program, because he has a complete score number, but he did not do any of the agility testing, which is so incredibly telling for wide receivers. However, 6 foot tall, 6'1", 200 pounds. That's a good size. 9.5-inch hands, 32-inch arms, ran a 4.43 40-yard dash with a 1.54 10-yard split. Those are both good numbers. Only a 35.5-inch vertical, and the 20-yard split is a bit suspect. So a good athlete that has the things like 6'1", 200 pounds, running a 4.43 40, that's prototype size in the NFL. Here's Sky Moore. Sky Moore is 5'9", 195. Both of those numbers, not great. Had a 4.41 40-yard dash, so marginally faster than is Elijhah Badger, but had an elite 1.46, I believe it was a 1.49, 10-yard split. Sometimes the numbers get mistranslated, but either way, it was an elite 10-yard split. Unfortunately, he hasn't done anything with it. He had a 34.5-inch vertical leap, which is 1 inch shorter than Elijhah Badger's. So you're looking at a guy who had this was the confusing part about Sky Moore as a prospect. Looking at him on the field, I would have thought he had good agility numbers. He had downright awful agility numbers. But we don't get any agility numbers for Elijhah Badger. Had Elijhah Badger put up poor agility numbers, maybe he would not have scored the 9.3. Now, here's what I'm going to do for the remainder of this video. I'm trying to make a point about Elijhah Badger. I am not going to use my own scouting because that would be my word versus Rocky Magana's. So, what I've decided to do is use NFL.com's scouting. And here is what NFL.com said about Elijhah Badger in the draft. They graded him a 6.11, which is a good backup with the potential to develop into a starter. They said he was a 6th-round pick. So, in essence, Kansas City got an additional draft pick by signing Elijhah Badger as a free agent. Lance Zierlein said this about Badger. There are times where Badger looks like the youngster on the playground who's a grade older than everyone else and able to do whatever he wants. He's on the lighter side and won't outrun NFL coverage, but the game comes naturally for him. His route running can be effective, but he needs better detail and urgency. Those are things that you coach at the pro level. Basically, always, those are the things that you coach at the pro level. He has above-average ball skills to track throws and win in tight spaces or to pluck a ball from outside his frame. That sounds like Juju Smith-Schuster's catching ability, but you have Sky Moore's speed. He's slippery with the ball in his hands and able to handle kick returns. That sounds like Sky Moore's athleticism, but you have Juju Smith-Schuster's ability to catch the ball. If he can handle more physical NFL coverages, he has the talent to become a wide receiver 3. This is from NFL.com, not your favorite scrambling armchair. NFL.com says that he is a draft-worthy player. NFL.com says he does have the talent to become a wide receiver 3. I think I put his ceiling at a wide receiver 2, but I can't remember exactly where I said that was. That said, not the type of wide receiver 2 that Jalen Royals would be. Earlier today, I made a video where I talked about Jalen Royals could be the one of those guys that is a great number 2 wide receiver, and people constantly try to make him a number 1. I don't think that is the slot into which Elijhah Badger fills or slides, but I do think that he does have NFL wide receiver potential for sure. The strengths that they list for Elijhah Badger. Now, here's what I want to do here. We talked about Sky Moore. Sky Moore, not very popular around here. I get it. We talked about Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Smith-Schuster, pretty popular, but I think we're all realistic. While I read Elijhah Badger's strengths, I want you to compare and contrast them to Sky Moore and Juju Smith-Schuster. Not Rashee Rice, not Xavier Worthy, not Jalen Royals, not Hollywood Brown. Juju Smith-Schuster and Sky Moore. That's it. Very athletic, and the game comes naturally to him. Sky Moore's athletic. The game does not come naturally to him. The game comes naturally to Juju Smith-Schuster, but he is not very athletic anymore. Mid-route acceleration and speed changes catch coverage off guard. Well, that was one of Sky Moore's selling factors coming out of college. We haven't seen him do well with it in the NFL. Juju Smith-Schuster apparently has, to my knowledge, one speed now, and it is Smith-Schuster. Stops abruptly, opening windows on his hitches and comebacks. One thing that we have seen occasionally with Mahomes, but he has not ever really pulled this ability out in mass. He can hit a spot. There's been several times where there's been a wide receiver who can run a stop route, and he'll go out there and turn around and the ball's right on him. The Chiefs don't use it all the time for whatever reason, but Mahomes is very deadly accurate with those throws. And what does that mean? Well, it doesn't mean that Elijhah Badger is going to be racing down the field for a 60-yard touchdown. But you don't use those routes for touchdowns. You use those routes for first downs. You use those routes to stay on the field. Soft but sudden hands with easy extension outside of the frame. Again, that sounds like Juju. That sounds nothing at all like Sky Moore. Body control and positioning to succeed with smaller catch windows. Sure would be nice. Slippery when the ball is in his hands. Sounds like Sky Moore, does not sound like Juju Smith-Schuster. So I think that what we're doing in the Arrowhead Pride article is answering the wrong question. The question is not, can Elijhah Badger be a number 1 wide receiver, which again, in fairness, admittedly, the article never asks. But I think it's what it's answering. The question is, can Elijhah Badger be better than Sky Moore and or Juju Smith-Schuster? And I'll be real honest with you, I kind of don't care if the answer is yes. I don't care if the answer is a definitive yes, because I'm willing to run the experiment, especially with those top 4 wide receivers, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, and Jalen Royals already on the roster. You may as well run one experiment through the season. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.